A Beautiful Boy. As parents, readers may continuously find themselves questioning if they would have made the same decisions as David Sheff did in regards to his son Nick. Nick is a drug addict. His drug of choice is crystal meth. Throughout A Beautiful Boy, a father's journey through his son's addiction, David shares a first-hand account what it's like to be a parent of an addict. Sheff himself decided to write this memoir to tell his son's struggle with addiction. Ultimately, David Sheff paints a picture of addiction through the eyes of a parent, using the past events of divorce, a doctrine of unconditional love, and gradual acceptance, giving the reader an outside frame of reference to Nick's struggles. Readers can use the first-hand accounts of a father's challenges in dealing with a child's addiction. The book is but one piece of a puzzle that each parent must assemble themselves when faced with addiction. David and Nick seem to have a relatively close relationship, despite the fact that Nick's parents went through a divorce when he was younger. David seems to be an open-minded parent wanting to expose Nick to the realities of the world. David has the attitude that it is better to be open and honest and deal with controversial topics as they present themselves than to completely shelter his son. David explains, and so throughout Nick's childhood, ever since he was 7 or 8, I talked to him about drugs. We spoke about them early and often, in ways prescribed by the Partnership for a Drug-Free America. David recalls his experimentations with drugs in the 60s and doesn't want Nick to experience the same reckless lifestyle. When Nick becomes old enough to understand what drugs and peer pressure are, David discusses the consequences and life-altering effects that drug addiction can take on one's life. David was honest with his son at a time when drug use is at an all-time high. Honesty and openness about subjects that are life-affecting are important. Utmost honesty and candor are a two-way street. David states, "When I discovered his dishonesty, I'm confounded because I still think that we are closer than most fathers and their sons. One can never fully know what his children are up to. One must just trust them." No matter how much parents tell their children not to touch a burner on the stove because it's hot, they will not learn until they burn themselves enough to remember to not touch it. It's that old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. One raises a child in hopes that when they let the child fly from the nest, that child will make productive choices that only better them as people in society. Drug use is not a societal virtue. Having an addict for a child is a nightmare for any parent. David confessed, "Nick has used meth. In spite of his protests and promises, I increased my pleas for him to go into rehab, but he will not yield." This is evidence that David has learned of Nick's use. He only wants his son to get better. Throughout the book, there is no doubt that the love David has for his son is unconditional. David explains, "We seek out the best for our children, the best stroller and car seat recommended by Consumer Reports, and fret over every decision about their toys, diapers, clothes, meals, medicine, teething ring, inoculations, and just about everything else." Parents want what is best for their children, in whatever situation their children may be. Parents want the best education, housing, safest car, and in Nick's case, the best rehab facility. The best rehab facility, in theory, will provide him with the highest chance of getting clean and staying clean. David makes it known that whatever the situation, he just wants his son sober and alive. David has accepted his son's addiction and is ready to walk the road to recovery. However, Nick is the only one that can take that walk. Nick isn't David's only child. Jasper and Daisy are David's 2 younger children from his second marriage. Even though Nick doesn't take his family into consideration while he is using, David still must think of his younger siblings. Seeing a brother suffer from an addiction can take an unnecessary toll on younger siblings. David shares, "Somehow I never fell apart around Jasper and Daisy. I do not allow myself to. I don't want to worry them any more than they already are." This reiterates that David just wants what is best for his children, all of them. David thinks it's best to spare Jasper and Daisy the dirty details of their older brother. Children have some natural innocence at a younger age, and it is best to try to preserve that. David does this in hopes of being able to have some control over the situation. David admits, I kept our family's problem a secret for a long time. It wasn't that I was ashamed. I wanted to protect Nick, to preserve our friends and others' good impressions of him. David doesn't want his family to be judged. In his eyes, Nick is still young and innocent, much like Jasper and Daisy. Nick has put himself and his family through a roller coaster of events. One can only handle so much as a parent before they have to let a child figure out life for themselves. That deciding point might be hard to reach, but one can't let an adult child consume your every aspect of your life after they have reached the legal age. David explains many families drain every penny, mortgaging their homes and bankrupting their college funds and retirement accounts, trying successful drug rehab programs as well as boot camps, wilderness camps, and every variety of therapy. There is a time for a parent to admit that they have done all they can and that they can no longer afford to try to help their child. It doesn't mean that the parent doesn't love their child or that they no longer care. It just means that they can no longer handle the stress of an addiction in every aspect of their own personal lives. Along with David no longer carrying his son's addiction, he himself needed to get help for all that he went through. David became an addict to his son's addiction, staying up all night, worrying, spending countless hours researching rehab centers, and doing whatever it took to offset the financial burden rehab was having on his family. David says, I have accepted the other C. I cannot control it. I cannot cure it. David has learned that he cannot heal Nick. Nick has to heal himself. The road to recovery isn't short, but it's a road worth taking.